The Mad Ghoul from 1943 on Blu-ray. I'm going to do a review of this, and this is day 9 of 31 of my 31 days of horror from 1943, and this thing is only 66 minutes long. And you can see, there it is. No, where are we at? On the bottom. There we go. This was really fun and had me pretty shocked in a few places. I thought the Blu-ray actually looked pretty good on this one. I'm not sure what kind of restoration was done, but the sound is pretty crunchy. Like throughout the movie, the sound, I don't know if it was like crackly or what, but not the greatest sound on this one. I mean, you could hear it just fine, but like you could definitely hear that it wasn't like a pristine sound restoration as well. Like I said, it looks pretty good. There's a few scratches, like I think you can see one right here. See if it'll show up right there. I don't know, can you see that? Yeah, you can see that tiny thin line. But really there wasn't very much print damage on here. It actually like looked great all the way through. I was pretty impressed with this one. So this doctor, this evil doctor, oh, surprise, starts cooking up some stuff in here with his secret mask on, and he's gonna lure his little assistant in here. So this guy had him and his like soon to be married girlfriend over last night, and he could totally tell that something was going on with her, like she's not into him anymore. And he's thanking him. He's like, thanks for having us over. She was totally lighthearted after we left. And of course, when he was out of the room, he's like, you totally don't love him. And she's like, how do you know? Anyway, there was another scene where she's singing and the dude playing the piano, and they just like look at each other, and it's like, oh, yeah, she's not in love with that guy anymore. But this scene right here, where he's gonna basically lure him into his lab to pretty much die with that gas or become the mad ghoul, as it were. Basically, it's almost like a zombie that obeys orders that he's going to get turned into. But this is like the definition of dramatic irony, because he's going to send him into that room. But look at what he says before he goes in there. It's actually really pathetic.
I helped her, anyway. Helped. As a matter of fact, I'm going to call her this afternoon.
Look at his face.
I'm going to ask her to marry me today before she goes. I lay awake all night getting up my courage. And
oh, no. It's so sad.
Both of you. Thank you, Doctor.
He's like, well, anyway, off to the gas chamber. Got him. Look, and he lifts him up, and he's different now. His hair's messy, and he has makeup on. Look how scary he is. Here's another one of these classic lines from these movies that I just live for.
Very hot.
Cops talking to the newspaper.
You got a maniac to deal with.
Yeah, what kind of a maniac?
Well, you got...
Just these classic lines. And one thing's for certain, you got a maniac to deal with. Because they went and took the heart out of this body, and then I think they could have totally covered up their tracks. They just left the casket up on the ground with it like open. It's like you could have closed it and shoved it back in there. But I guess they wanted to get caught eventually. I do like this four button suit though. I think that's classy. There's a lot of this kind of double-breasted suits in these old 40s movies. But I do like the straight line with the 4 buttons. I think that looks really good.
Who for some mysterious reason wanted that dead man's heart. Your reporter will keep you informed of further...
Okay, so the doctor is listening to obviously a news report of what he just did. The mad ghoul, the guy who is actually carrying the stuff out at his orders, like the zombie kid, who he can turn back normal. So he gives him like heart tissue or whatever. I'm not quite sure how the medical stuff works in this movie, but they have to keep taking hearts, and then they can turn him back normal from his ghoulish state. So he's listening to the radio. He's not letting the other guy listen though. Also, he's sleeping because he was up all night, and the ghoul guy thinks that he's having these nightmares. So it's kind of like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but it's like chemically induced instead of just like internal. and then he's in control of him. So it's really interesting. And then this part here, so he's controlling the information flow to this guy. He hears the radio talking about them, so he turns it off. And then right here, he's going to see that the newspaper's talking about them, and watch what he does. Anyway, so they make it this whole dramatic scene for him to burn the newspaper. I probably didn't need to sit and hold it on there, him struggling to light it for so long. But the point is that he's got this guy that's he's like, oh, you're not well, stay in bed. But he's keeping him up at night doing these ghoulish things, and so it's keeping him tired and keeping him unwell. But he's controlling the information that he's getting, and it's just interesting to see the 40s version of that, which is like, oh, turn off the radio and burn the newspaper, and it's like, and you're good. Information controlled. It's like nowadays, with everything where anybody can upload information and you can get it from anywhere, like this would be almost impossible. So it's kind of cool to see like the old analog version of how to control information flow to your victim. So like kind of like I mentioned earlier, this is starting to become a common theme in a lot of these old horror movies, is that you have some kind of mad or bad or evil doctor who somehow ends up having some kind of control over somebody, whether it's like coercion and so they're manipulated to do it, or some kind of like actual control where they don't have a choice anymore. So it's really interesting. There's like this theme of just like bad or evil or like self-righteous doctors that get carried away with their task, and just like the ends justify the means, so they can be evil to bring forth some good thing. Kind of like in the mad doctor of Market Street. He's trying to cure stuff, and so he thinks he's justified in doing all these evil acts. So anyway, common theme noticing here. Wonder what was on people's minds that these stories kept resonating. This movie also has lots of opera. Here's the lady and the guy, aka the young attractive couple of this movie that we are fully expecting to make it out alive. And I wasn't thinking they would. This was almost like chick flick level of awkward scene, because you can always, if there's one thing you can count on chick flicks for, it's for freaking awkward scenes to make you just want to curl up and die. And so you've got Ted and what's her face, and then Eric and the doctor, and so they're like currently engaged but not really, because she totally doesn't love him anymore. And then this guy is they're gonna like get together. And so before these two walked in, this guy's like, are you going to tell Ted? Like, you should tell Ted. Like, you really shouldn't keep this up. And she's like, no, he's sick. I can't tell him. And it's just like, yeah, just string him along and let him think you're still engaged. Anyway, so then they're all in here talking together. This is very awkward.
Yeah, that's my contribution to music. I introduced him to Isabel.
And a very important contribution, too. Well, thank you, Doctor.
I didn't realize that.
Very nice.
He introduced him to Isabel.
Would you like to join me in my dressing room? I think that would be an excellent idea.
They both know what's going on. So then he pulls him out of there to give space for this to happen.
You won't cure.
So she is about to tell him that they're going to break it off.
I came to ask you to marry me.
He says this. Oh, I'm only laughing to keep from crying.
But if you're afraid too.
Oh, he's going to collapse.
If you're afraid.
Music's building.
If you're.
His chemical condition kicks in. Skadoosh. It's over. Anyway, then he's basically stuck like that. And then when the doc comes to revive him, he's got the scary makeup on again, and his hair's all messed up again, ready to do evil for the good doctor. So I guess his condition just comes out every once in a while, and then they have to go dig up hearts out of the graveyard or murder people for him. Either way, it's kind of a fun, like I said, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but that's so awkward. He's like, I want to marry you. And she's like seriously right about to tell him that they need to break up. Oof. I kind of feel like I am reviewing a chick flick at this point, but with a lot of scary killing. So he gets him to go into the graveyard to look for some hearts. And look at this. Look at this. This is such perfect black and white horror moodiness. You got the fog, the pokey, scary trees, the graves, like, oh, it's so perfect. I love it. But yeah, they're gonna get a fresh one here. So they just conk this guy on the head, and then they're like, it's heart surgery time. And my 8-year-old's like, should I cover my eyes? Because he kind of came in while I was watching this part. And he's like, is this scary? Should I cover my eyes? And it's like, well, that's an interesting question. Because yes, it's scary. But should you cover your eyes? Not really, because all the scariness of this movie's in your head. So I told him this is the kind of scary movie that you know what's happening, and so it's scary in your head, but not scary on screen. So I wonder if he got that or not. But yeah, he's asked if he should cover his eyes, and it's like, well, no, because the camera already moved away, but you see him going towards him with a knife. You know he's going to do surgery and take his heart. So I think these kind of scary movies like this and kind of the Hitchcock style, like the early Hitchcock style, where scary things happen, but it's just implied. It doesn't show anything. I actually think this is really effective. I think I can imagine worse than any movie can show me. So I actually think, I don't know if there's an argument that it's more scary, but I like it. I think it's more tasteful and creative. Actually, I think you have to be more creative to elicit like scariness without just showing it on screen. So, what do you think about scary movies that don't really show anything? I think they're great.
Very well.
So she's so happy that he's agreed to tell the guy that they're not going to get married anymore.
Men have died for less than holding hands, Professor.
Oh, don't mind him, Dr. Morris. It's his idea of humor.
I don't flatter myself that I've made him jealous.
Men have died for less than holding hands. It's like, you're going to bring up death and wait to see what the controller of the Mad Ghoul does next. Look at this like 40s tie. He's got that pin up really high right there. I don't know if I've ever seen a tie pin up that high. Anyway, he walks up, they're touching hands, and he's like, people have died for less than that. Check this out now. Dark, scary alleyway. Listen to what he says.
Listen carefully. Eric is waiting at the end of the alley. You understand?
Eric is waiting.
Remember, Eric betrayed you. You must kill Eric.
Oh my gosh.
Eric.
He gives him a gun.
Kill
It's so
Eric.
suspenseful and so creepy.
Kill Eric.
It's like this zombie guy with a gun. And then you see the shadow coming up, music's building. Oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? No, they're not gonna kill Eric. No! Oh my gosh! And right when you think this movie's about to go full craziness, this girl screams and saves his life. And then the Mad Ghoul decides to break it off and go back to the car. But oh my gosh, for a minute there I was like, no, they're gonna kill him. This is horrible. But they didn't. But oh my gosh, it was so close. He was about to die. Boop. We were about to not have a young, beautiful couple end up together. We cannot have a young, beautiful couple not end up together. They must survive. So anyway, I was a little worried that I was like, they're going to break tradition. They're going to kill this dude. Okay, so a very interesting way that the plot's going. So you have the lady is traveling around singing, and the doctor and the ghoul are basically traveling around with them. And every city that they go in, there's either a murder or like a grave robbery. And so this journalist, boop, figures it out and decides to basically make himself as bait. So he goes ahead to a town that he knows that she's going to go to. He puts himself in this morgue, in this coffin, and he's like, they're totally going to come here. So this journalist like figured it out. He figured out their pattern. He figured out what they're going to do. And he actually goes ahead and he puts himself in this coffin with a gun. And it's like, wow, what a like aggressive journalist trying to get some evidence. And this funeral home guy here, boop, boop, he's in on it. So he's helping him. And so this scene right here, like this, and about 1 minute after here, you have the absolute funniest part in the whole movie. Like actually funny. It's supposed to be funny, not just me laughing at it. The funniest part in the whole movie, followed by probably the saddest and scariest and most disturbing part in the whole movie. So it's the final bit of advice that the funeral home guy gives. Listen to what he says.
I'm terribly worried about leaving you here alone.
Forget it. I don't think I'll be alone very long. And tomorrow, you and I will be sensational.
Okay, listen to what he says.
Remember, For goodness sakes, whatever you do, don't mar this coffin.
That's terrible. It's like life and death. Like he's making himself as a bait to get his heart cut out. And this guy, she's like, whatever you do not mar this coffin. But guess what's about to freaking happen? I think the coffin's going to get marred, and I think it's going to get stained. I think it's going to get really, really stained. Like destroyed. Pretty ballsy reporter to do this. Anyway, music's getting scary. Hands him the knife, heart cut knife outer thing. And then what's he do? Pop out of here.
Brother, up.
The reports of your death seem to have been greatly exaggerated.
All right. So first of all, what a beautiful picture. I think you could frame that right there. I think it would look great in the bathroom. Anyway, so he's got everything's all figured out, and he's like, "Ha, I got you. I got evidence. You're gonna get this." But look what he's holding. He's holding the freaking scalpel, and he's behind him. So, yeah, here he goes. Creepy neck stab.
Why don't you stop? Why, that gag's got whiskers.
Oof. He neck scalpels him, and they kind of wrestle him, and then I'm sure there's so much blood in that coffin. Oh, and then they take his heart. So it's like, man, good job figuring out what was going to happen, but it paid for it with his life. This is actually incredibly sad. This guy realizes that he's the mad ghoul, because he didn't know. He thought he was just having bad dreams, because this guy's been controlling the information flow to this guy, and he just now heard about what's been happening, and he's like, oh, that's been in my dreams. And he's like, oh crap, that's me. And so he goes and writes a note, like a confession note, because he knows he's going to turn again. But it is incredibly sad. Him finding this out is really awful. He does take care of the doctor, though, by exposing him basically to the same chemical. Pretty cool move. Got the two cops in the audience. Here comes one of the greatest lines in the whole movie. Listen to this.
Nothing ghoulish looking about that guy to me.
You never tell about these musicians. A lot of them are pretty queer ducks.
Anyway, so these guys are there in the audience because all these murderers and ghoulish things have been happening at like the same city as her concert. So they start to suspect this guy, Eric. And so they're like, oh, he doesn't look like a ghoul. And there's like, you can never tell about these musicians. A lot of them are queer ducks. Anyway, that's a very anti-musician line. I thought it was pretty funny, these cops. But I think it's them being in the middle of the audience is going to come into play here in a second. So this part is actually really horrifying and really intense. So you have the mad doctor who has sent him. He said, go kill Eric and then yourself. And then he's trying to go stop him, but he's got the disease too. So he's like turning, and then he's going to be in the graveyard, like trying to dig up a body because he's about to die and he needs a heart. But here goes the cops being in the right spot at the right time to protect these guys. All right, look at this young, absolutely beautiful couple. So crazy ending. So the mad doctor gets the disease, goes and basically starts trying to dig a grave and dies on top of it. Cops are in the right place at the right time. Hey, two good guys with a gun stop a bad guy with a gun. That's weird. Does that happen? But I thought this movie was pretty awesome and had a fun and intense ending. So this has been an absolutely enjoyable day 9 of 31 in my 31 days of horror. So if you like this kind of thing, getting super old movies, super spoiled, and kind of going on with me as I've seen it for the first time, then subscribe. And if you know someone that needs to get into that Halloween spirit, then share these videos with them. But I understand how it's not for everybody. But anyway, thank you for watching. And yeah, let me know what you thought of this. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.